Good afternoon and welcome to this regularly scheduled meeting for the Smith Falls Housing Advisory Committee. We have regrets one member this afternoon, but everyone else is in attendance. First off, I'd like to welcome the newest addition to the advisory committee, Joanne Moran. Joanne will be speaking in a few minutes just to talk about some of her experience as a family support worker for Connect Well in Smith Falls. So welcome, Joanne. As for approval of the agenda, need a motion, please. As agenda presented, it's Vicky and Courtney, all in favor? Thank you. Need a motion for the adoption of minutes from our August 18th meeting. Okay, Jeff and Vicky, all in favor? Thank you. I'll ask for disclosure of monetary interest. You can disclose now or anytime throughout the meeting. I don't see any hands up. So we're also fortunate to have Brooke Coots here today from Lanark County, and we're going to talk about, she's a homelessness service coordinator, and she's going to talk about an event, I guess not an event, but I guess a process happening later this month to help identify the challenges of homelessness within our community. So Brooke, welcome. Great to have you on board here today, and the screen, the floor, the table, it's all yours.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for inviting me. It's wonderful to be able to come and speak with such a passionate group. So, just 1 second here. Perfect. All right. So, I'm the Homelessness Services Coordinator for Lanark County. I started at the beginning of June. I was hired to help implement a provincial mandate that's in place right now for a point-in-time count, an enumeration, and a by-name list implementation. So what that exactly is the point-in-time count is a count of sheltered and unsheltered people experiencing homelessness on a single night. So here in Lanark County, we're going to be facilitating our point-in-time count on a specific day of Tuesday, September 21st. The homelessness enumeration involves gathering information about the demographic characteristics and circumstances of those experiencing homelessness in our community. So the province has given us 14 provincially mandated questions that they'd like us to use when surveying the community and the population that are experiencing homelessness. And then the third part to this is our by name list. So this is the new initiative for Lanark County. It's a real-time list of all known people experiencing homelessness in Lanark County. So this is a community-driven initiative, and it's going to be ongoing. So we have a committee right now that's formed that I'll speak to a little bit later, but we're just in the beginning stages, and we're utilizing our point-in-time count to kick off our by-name list. So what exactly are the point-in-time count and enumeration survey objectives? Well, we're hoping to look and get a really good snapshot of homelessness in Lanark County, including information about the scope and the nature, establish a baseline sample that can be used to track progress. So right now, we don't have a number at our fingertips of how many people are experiencing homelessness. And to be able to have that data at the tip of our fingers and be able to take all the information that we collect and share with the community will allow us to plan, look at gaps in service, and make sure that there's no duplicates of service going on and that people aren't falling through the cracks. So it also is going to help us understand the impact of local strategies and initiatives. And again, we're all using this information to launch our by name list initiative. So when we're doing this survey and when we're working on the by name list, we have to define homelessness. So this came from the province. So when we look at homelessness, it's defined as a situation in which an individual or family is without stable, permanent housing, or the immediate prospect means an ability of acquiring it. So people may be defined as and unsheltered. So when we're talking about somebody who's unsheltered, that means living in an encampment, a tent, a garage, a van, any kind of structure that isn't meant for long-term housing. An emergency shelter, so anybody who's accessing one of our youth shelters or Lanark County Interval House, or in Lanark County, it's commonly seen too, we do use motels and hotels as a shelter as well. And then we have the provisionally accommodated. So this is very common in rural communities. We're seeing a lot of this right now. So this is the couch surfing. So staying with family, friends, all that. We really saw, I think this was a huge influx in our homeless numbers that we saw during COVID, because it tended to really limit the opportunity for people to couch surf. And then, of course, to anybody who's being discharged from a treatment center who doesn't have a planned accommodation for upon their discharge, or a correctional facility or institute. And anybody who's at risk of homelessness. So if somebody is been served an M4, or something that we've seen more commonly happen in Lanark County as well is with the trending housing market. Lots of landlords have put their properties up for sale, and they have, ended up, people that never thought that they would experience homelessness. Well, here they are, because their unit has been sold on this trending housing market. So our point in time count and our registry week to kick off our by name list is September 20th to 24th, which is next week. It's a very, very busy week in the province of Ontario. So what this is going to consist of is, right now we're doing lots of training, getting our community partners ready to run the surveys. We are making sure that all of our confidentiality things are in place. Then we're going to be throughout the week facilitating the surveys, and then again reiterating that we are looking for a total number of people experiencing homelessness on Tuesday, September 21st. So although we're running the surveys all week, there is the very first question states, where did you sleep on the night of Tuesday, September 21st? So if we don't get all the surveys done or capture all of our numbers on the Tuesday, there is an opportunity still for the rest of the week for us to get that. Again, we want to connect with our community, the people that are experiencing homelessness. We want to provide resources. And of course, we're going to give an honorarium, a gift card for people who choose to give us their time. And again, a registry week is just a great mechanism to quickly collect actionable data on people that are currently experiencing homelessness. And again, we are reiterating this again, we are using this also to kick off our by name list, which I'll speak to again here shortly. So we have lots of community partners involved right now for next week. They have surveys or they're either referring or they've had some kind of involvement with the planning process of this. So as you can see, there's lots of familiar names up there. So we've got Lanark County Mental Health, Interval House, we've got the Almont District Hospital, Connect Well, Rideau Community Health Services, Victim Services, Cornerstone. We've got both the school boards, the health unit, ODSP, OW, Salvation Army, Table, and Smith Falls Food Banks. So again, just to speak quickly about our by name list. So again, this is a real-time actionable list of people experiencing homelessness in our community. We will continue this data moving forward. So we have a mechanism put in place to add people to the list, to remove people to the list. We have privacy and policies set in place to make this operate functional, and we'll be able to provide our community with more information on an ongoing basis. So there's also a lot of really unique and awesome benefits to having a by name list. As you can see on the little table here, it shows, who's becoming homeless and why. So is there any reoccurring trends? One that's happening again, I've mentioned here in Lanark County is, lots of houses are being sold. Sorry about that. And again, what housing programs are working. So the by name list will allow us to collect more data on each person's individual situation. And we'll be asking, what services did you utilize? So it'll help us when we're planning to move forward about where we need to be directing our funds and our time and our energy. And then who's coming back into contact with our service. So it tracks the inflow and outflow. So if we have people that are coming in and out and in and out and in and out, well, is there a pattern that we could recognize that we can try to break and offer more supports and change the outcome? So again, just looking at, breaking down those silos, working as a community to figure out how we can link and match individuals to services. So things that we've been considering during planning our point in time count and enumeration is community coverage. So we live in a rural community, so we really need to make sure that we're covering all areas of Lanark County, including the really rural areas up in the Highlands and some areas in the Mississippi Mills. Homelessness doesn't look like maybe it does in downtown Toronto, so we need to be mindful about that, and we have to pound the pavement a little bit more to get the word out and make sure that we're reaching everybody. We've engaged all different community partners. So we've tried to connect with people in the legal system, people with mental health, people with addictions, so that, we're reaching all demographics. And we've reached out to our Indigenous partners as well to inform them of the event. And we're also looking at, making it accessible as well. So we're really flexible on how we complete the surveys. So, if you're not able to go in person to one of the community partners or to the Lanark County Social Service Building, you can call in and we'll make arrangements for you. Again, we had to consider COVID because we are still in that climate. And so again, for everyone who's participating, we're making sure that all safety precautions are put in place for the participants and for our surveyors. So what's next is, we're going to run this registry week next week. We're going to collect all the data. We're going to bring everything back and we will share our results. We're thinking of things will be ready probably in October. So they will be available on the Lanark County website and we'll be sharing them publicly. So you'll be able to take those results and use them within your own program or your own community group to look at planning and whatnot. So and then obviously we have to report to the ministry as well. And just on that too, the point in time count it's happening everywhere. So again, it's not just in Lanark County, this is happening all across the province. And we're also going to take the opportunity to debrief with our community partners after and see if there was anything identified or if there's anything we can learn from this opportunity and moving forward, what we could do differently. And as for the by name list goes, it's ongoing. So we're going to continue to work on this. We're going to populate our by name list with all agreeing and consenting participants. And then we meet monthly, and the next meetings we'll be looking at starting to add our coordinated access portion. So that's looking at taking those names and linking and matching them and prioritizing them to resources. So right now we're just kind of scaling our community to see what kind of things we can link to the list and how efficiently we can equally spread those out across all people experiencing homelessness. So it's a work in progress, but it's coming and it's really exciting. And I think we've got some great partnerships. So right now we have Lanark County Interval House, we have Lanark County Mental Health, and we have Cornerstone Landing Youth Services. And again, we have Lanark County Social Services that's chairing and leading the implementation. So that's it for me for now. Thank you guys for having me. I've got my contact information there. Please don't ever hesitate to reach out. If you have any questions about the initiative, please, reach out, and more than happily, I will share what I can with you.
That's awesome, Brooke. And I think we're all anxious to see the results of this exercise and very valuable information. And I think that not just the information, but the ability to take the people who are homeless, at risk of homelessness, and connect them to resources, as you mentioned, is very reassuring. And I guess the hope is that there will be sufficient resources to meet the needs and the demand. I'm sure there's probably some questions from the group. I'll at this moment open the floor up to questions. So I'm sure, Brooke, you're prepared for questions. Yeah, Lindsay?
Yeah, the school district boards, I think those are like very valuable data places to obtain a lot of data. And I'm curious what that implementation is that going to be something that's passed out to every classroom, or is it an option for students to walk into? How is that rollout happening in the schools? Because I think the students can be a really big data point in a large gathering that you guys can capitalize on getting data from.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. That's great. We have connected with the kind of some higher up staff that gave us some great contacts within our schools in Lanark County. So again, we're just looking at youth. So we're looking at the high schools and our TR Leger program as well. So that's how we're doing that. And we've also connected with the guidance counselors too. So they're to be advertising within their schools and reaching out kind of on an individual basis of their known student population.
Additional questions? Brooke, can you advise how detailed this report will be? Will it break it down by community, by the type of homelessness, how people are managing, and et cetera? Can you comment on that, please?
Yeah, so we're going to break it down into each area, municipality. So people for the town of Smith Falls, you'll be able to see exactly how many people in Smith Falls. We'll be able to weed out things like we could give you ages, race. We could give you if they have military background or if they have addictions, if they're connected to any community resources. There's quite an array of things. So something that I could do with your group as well is I'm more than willing to share a copy of the survey too for you guys to look at and take a glimpse through afterwards. And just that will help you kind of navigate and see the information that we're collecting.
Great, thank you. Any additional questions? Yes, Jeff?
Thanks, Brooke. Early on in the presentation, you mentioned N4, and maybe you could explain what that is for people, because there are others that are listening in as well.
Sure, yeah, that's just a notice of potential termination of their housing accommodation. So it could be a warning or it could be an actual eviction. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I guess I should just add quickly too, the last time that Lanark County did something like this was in 2018. And it was a point in prevalence count, so very similar to what we're doing now.
Mm-hmm. I guess it'd be a good point of comparison as well to see how the environment has changed. And I mean, like many others here, I hear from people on a regular basis who are either homeless or at risk of homelessness. One family less than that, a little over an hour ago, who they're as you mentioned, their home's up for sale, but they're renting and they are facing probably eviction. So how deeply concerning that is, especially in an environment where every time a unit comes up, there are generally 30, 40, 50 people who are seeking that unit. So we know that there's challenges for a lot of people in trying to find a place. And as you mentioned, a lot of people who are precariously housed and maybe temporarily housed, and we may not have the same visible homelessness that we would experience maybe walking through certain parts of Ottawa or definitely Toronto. But they are here. We need to know where they are and how we can help them. Any other questions or comments for Brooke? I don't see any. So Brooke, thank you very much for being here. And We look forward to seeing the report in October, and perhaps we will have you back maybe to share some of the details.
Sounds good. I'd appreciate that. Thank you, guys.
Okay, take care. Next up is our newest member of the task force, Joanne Moran. Joanne works for Connect Well. Joanne is on, I guess, the front lines and understands deeply some of the challenges that some people in our community are facing. So, Joanne, it's great to have you as part of the task force. I appreciate your experience and your passion, and we're anxious to hear what you have to share today.
Well, I don't have a lot to share that is different from what Carrie sent to me. You guys seem to be pretty much on track. People are struggling. It's not just with homelessness is the first one, and then shortage of homes. So although Brooke said that there's not a lot of couch surfing, unfortunately, there are a lot of couch surfing or multifamily in one unit, so it becomes challenging and a safety issue as well for a lot of the families, especially when there's children in the home. So multiple adults with few children, so it becomes quite challenging in the home. But a lot of what I've read through all of the paperwork that was sent to me, you're pretty much on target with what is going on in our community. Shortage of homes is what is the biggest thing. And it's beautiful to have these nice homes being built in beautiful subdivisions. But, like we also have to look at our marginalized population and our seniors. I've seen a lot of seniors really struggling with doing the food delivery. So I'm very concerned with the housing issues for not just the young family, but also for the seniors. And that's why I'm really happy to be part of this group. Maybe I could share some of my thoughts, and maybe we could brainstorm and try and figure out some things. One thing that I really wanted to say, though, is that I'm really happy to say that Sheridan Manor is going to be expanding. So that's going to help. Very disappointed that we couldn't get the St. Francis building. The church decided to not have the building. That was very disappointing, because it would have been a great outlet. Another thing that I find really hard is that most of where we have to be careful is in the downtown core. And when we look at Sussex and Empress, they're all on this side of the bridge. All the new stuff and all the nice stuff is on the other side of the bridge. So a lot of the families think that they're second-class citizen, and they're not really being taken seriously because they're in the old part of Smith Falls. So, and that's when we see too a lot of buildings that are not being well maintained. This was a few years back, but I had a family that if they turned their hallway light, the bathroom light would blow up. So they could never turn their hallway light. And there was no plug, so they couldn't have night lights for the kids if they went to the bathroom. And we addressed it many times with the landlord, and we were always told, oh, well, we'll fix it. And it was never fixed, but eventually she was able to find another place and she moved. But there's a lot of those stories out there if you take time to listen to their challenges.
Joanne, can you explain a little bit about your role with Connect Well?
My job is I am the group facilitator for Good Food for a Healthy Baby. And throughout the COVID, I've been doing one-on-one with people because we can't have groups. So I provide prenatal vitamins, food vouchers, prenatal support. We get a lot of donations, so I am able to provide some of the essentials, baby essentials, and just try and make sure that they have a healthy pregnancy. So that's my job. But I worked for 24 years and I was doing home visiting prior to the last 7 years being the Good Food for a Healthy Baby facilitator. So,
and then through COVID, you mentioned you were also doing deliveries for the food bank.
Yes, yeah, that was an initiative that, well, the town was also on this meeting and asking agency if somebody could do it. And I volunteered to do it for Connect Well, but that's coming to an end. So, yeah, so it gave me another opportunity to not only see young families struggling, but also seniors, as I mentioned before. A lot of seniors are struggling in our community.
Well, thanks, Joanne. And again, I think it's great to have you on board with your wisdom and experience. I know you'll have a lot to add.
Thank you.
We'll move forward with the agenda. We have a number of priority issues to look after this afternoon. And looks like it's Carl and Carrie show for the most part. So Carrie, you're first up with item A, superseding building code.
Yes, these items shouldn't take too long. These are all items, Mayor Panko, that came out of the last meeting we had. So there was a question about whether we could supersede building code. And so I reached out to our deputy CBO, Peter Black, who informed me, he just said the short answer was no, that they enforce minimum code requirements, and that, you know, if we were to do something like that, that we could be challenged, which would obviously put the municipality in a, you know, in a situation where we'd probably have to, you know, there'd be legal fees and associated with that. So unfortunately, that kind of puts a stop to that discussion, but it was just a follow-up from our last meeting. And the
pause there for a second, Carrie. So that relates to going over and above the requirements of the building code to builders to build a certain number of fully accessible units.
True. Well, that was just, it was kind of a twofold. So the question that I posed to Peter was specifically just to go over and above building code requirements. And this is where it kind of meshes in with item B. So I'll let Carl speak to the accessible one, because he reached out to, Peter got inundated after our last meeting. He reached out to Peter on the accessibility. So I'll let Carl fill everybody in on that. And again, this was sent out via email. It's just a verbal update.
Okay, thank you. Carl.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And with respect to the preliminary inquiry as well, Peter indicated that building staff can suggest a consideration of going above and beyond, but it has to be very carefully communicated that this is not a requirement. It's just a suggestion or a possibility. But with respect to the other question that I followed up with Peter was regarding that 15% barrier free and just confirming how far barrier free goes in the code. And I think Carrie had provided that, forwarded Peter's response to the group as well. But just to summarize, yes, it's 15% of all suites of residential occupancy shall be provided a barrier free path of travel from the entrance to at least one bedroom, at least one bathroom, a kitchen space, living room or space. But what the code does not do is regulate building counter heights, for instance, in those areas. It doesn't go all the way. It does stipulate that a wall reinforcement for a grab bar needs to be included in a washroom. The grab bar doesn't need to be installed, but it needs to be, but the reinforcement needs to be there, and at least one bathroom needs to be designed to permit a wheelchair to turn in an open space not less than 1.5 meters in diameter. So that's the extent of how far the code goes for that for those 15% of units in sort of larger occupancy buildings.
Thanks, Carl. And any comments or questions? And Courtney, I see your reaction here, and I'd like you to comment.
I don't know how good my audio is going to be here.
We can hear you.
Okay, so kind of hard to hide my facial expression there, but I think that if that's how things are, it needs to be labeled as just strictly barrier-free and not accessible, because that's false advertisements. If you can't access everything and you can't live in the space and get the things you need, it's not accessible. It's maybe partially livable, but not accessible. It's barrier-free, but not accessible.
Vicki?
Since we can't implement anything, is there any way that the town can incentivize people to make it completely barrier-free, either through CIP funding or any means?
So good point. So Carl, with the development of a affordable housing CIP, can you comment on the possibility of including incentives for completely accessible units?
So I think that that would have to be investigated in careful detail, of course, whether that exceeds what we can do under Section 28 of the Planning Act, which establishes the legislative ability for a community improvement plan. My first thought is that sounds like a great way to proceed. We would be giving people the tools and the assistance to go above and beyond what the code requires. We're not requiring them to do, but we're providing them the support to be making those sorts of decisions. So that would absolutely, as we explore our housing CIP, I think that's a wonderful idea and a great step that we can investigate. And I think when council's being asked to consider the programs and consider the budget, of course, we want to make sure that the investment that we make in that program really goes to where it's needed. And that's where we really need to work with the community to identify essentially what needs to happen, how the design, what's the appropriate design, what are the appropriate things that we would be looking to incentivize. And that's certainly the important conversation we'll have as we develop that CIP.
Thank you. Lorraine?
Yeah, I just want to add to what Courtney was commenting on. It just seems to me that if you have barrier-free, but nothing is within reach of the person that's in a wheelchair, you can't say it's accessible. It's not accessible. Oh, you can wheel yourself in, but you can't eat, and you can't, use things that other people use. And I guess the bigger question for me is, how do we impact the building code across Ontario? We're not the only ones that need accessible buildings for our seniors. I mean, I'm a senior, and I know that there are many people that I've chatted with that are waiting for accessibility apartments to be built, and they're nowhere to be found. It's very frustrating that we're not looking at this as a provincial thing, not just a community by community. Anyway, I know it's...
Well, maybe we can start here. Carrie?
Well, I think Councillor Allen's hit on a good point, and especially coming from, at the council rep, that it's maybe the perfect opportunity for a recommendation to council from the Housing Advisory Committee that we petition the provincial government to alter the building code to make these amendments. And, we circulate through AMO and, have it circulate down through all the municipalities in Ontario and see if it gains any traction.
I would
agree completely.
For sure.
Lindsay, as a builder, I think you probably have some insight here.
I think it's funny how they maybe suggest that we can't ask for certain things, in the building code, but they do have other things that they do have in the building code. So I think it's once you go above 3 stories, there are requirements. You have to put in elevators. Once you hit 7 units, 15% have to be accessible. But why mandate elevators and make that a mandated item, but then not mandate heights on countertops? I mean, you're requiring a builder to put an elevator in for an obvious reason, but then contradicting it by not suggesting the heights. And so I just think they're contradicting themselves and possibly not wanting to do the work. And I think we have to really pressure them on that. You can't ask for a developer to put $100,000 into a building for an elevator and then not ask them to put in lower countertops. I think it's just ridiculous. And like, as a developer, I have no issue providing lower countertops or cabinets and making things reachable. Not just like for moving around, but actually, like, you know, there's a lot of things available that you can get. Clothing hangers that have drop down so you can still be in a chair when you take a hanger off of a rack and you just kind of press a button or a lever and it brings it back up. All these things are really readily available. Cabinets are readily available. They're not extra cost. And yeah, I just think I'm laughing when I'm going, I have to put an elevator in a building, but I don't have to make cabinets lower. And I feel like we need to pressure that body more to go, how can you make this mandatory, but we can't make this mandatory?
We can create the space, we can get people inside, but we can't help them live in it. Carrie?
I was just going to suggest, Mayor Panko, that you and Carl and I could perhaps have a draft resolution prepared for our next meeting of the group. We can run it by the group, and if we all concur, we can prepare a report to council. And maybe the other thing we can discuss once we have a draft resolution is maybe the agencies we want to filter it through. Obviously, we want it to hit, our MP or MPP. We'll have AMO filter it through their municipalities, but maybe even through like the OBOA. Lindsay, you'd probably know better than I, kind of those agencies too, that we could filter it through. So we can do that for the next meeting if everybody concurs.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Super. Okay. Back to you, Carrie, for content for poster for emergency housing.
Okay. Just writing notes. So this is a very quick item. So we were talking about last meeting about how there's nothing really out there in one thing or one outlet or one poster or whatever it may be for people to get to be able to have numbers they can reach out and get help. So I reached out to Emily Hollington at the county because obviously I didn't want to duplicate anything the county had done, or I didn't want to put out anything different, since this is kind of falls under their portfolio. So she did give me some agencies, that we could put out there into a poster, and she obviously said that they're the first stop would be Lanark County, and she gave us the number for them and Victim Services. She also gave the numbers for Interval House and Cornerstone, but I don't know, and I'm kind of looking to the group and kind of your areas of expertise and your thoughts of what else we can include on that poster. I mean, the ones she gave us are absolutely important, but I know there's other things out there, that other resources that this isn't capturing. And I just kind of wanted to use everybody else's brain to see what I am forgetting.
Okay, thoughts? One that comes to mind certainly is Salvation Army.
Yep.
It's an organization that has often helped people at times of need, or the variety of community meals as a quick resource, maybe schedule what's available when. Of course, the food bank. But I guess if you're homeless, getting raw food, or even a place to cook food, it might be hard to prepare food, but still, I think it's important that it be included. Vicki?
Definitely the legal clinic and Linda Tranter should be the first stop, because anybody who's experiencing not just homelessness, but like going to be homeless, like as soon as your house goes up for sale, you don't have to move out. That doesn't mean, oh crap, I'm out. You just have to contact her and find out your like rights and everything else. That should be very top of the list. Like find your rights.
Absolutely. Additional thoughts, Lorraine?
Yeah, I was also thinking, just because I'm dealing with this right now, someone who needs to go somewhere, they have to sell their home to be able to go the next step. But in the meantime, this person was asking, where can I go in the meantime? I need to sell my house to make the money that I can go to a nursing home or a retirement center. But in the meantime, I have no home if I do that. And they're sometimes being told a year to 2 year wait on some of these facilities. And I think that one of the key things that should be on that list, in my opinion, is those health unit gaps that help people stay in their home. For instance, Smiles, Wheels or Meals on Wheels, and the groups that come in and help people who are blind or need in-house servicing. Because I think part of the need for housing is that people are getting old and can't stay or maintain their house because they have no one there to deal with. And that's another part of housing issue right now, that people have nowhere to go.
Good point. Thank you. Ellie?
I guess it's kind of just depending on how in depth you want to go with this poster. But it's also important to look at Ontario Works. They run the Housing Options Program, which helps with rent arrears. And then also your Ontario Energy Board, which helps with low income energy assistance programs. Like you have the LEAP and the OESP. And then, coming from the youth perspective, it's also important to look at family and child services because they've got the VISA, they've got the CCSY and placement plans.
This is why I asked all of you. I never thought of all of these.
And then I don't know if you have the boarding houses or the DOM hostels on there as well. They're normally the first places I call after the legal clinic.
Do we have those in our area?
Yeah, Victoria House and Sheridan Manor.
Also group homes, sorry.
Now they're funded by the county, but still we get people who could go directly there.
Yeah, they're not really group homes. And then Lanark County Mental Health, I don't know if you have that on there, but they actually are the only ones with an emergency bed. It's one emergency bed that they have that's through Chardon Manor.
This may turn into a pamphlet.
Yeah, I don't know how intense and in-depth you want to go.
Well, and this is a starting point. Now that we've kind of got the ball rolling and I've got all these, I'll see if it's going to be like a book, if it looks like it, when I do the poster, then maybe we'll develop more of a pamphlet type thing. Yeah. I also don't want to reinvent the wheel. So, if it's just a matter of directing people to phone numbers and websites and a brief explanation, then and if it turns into a mini pamphlet, then that's dandy. That's fine. We can still get it right there.
Yeah, we at Cornerstone, we created an infographic. It's obviously specific to those under the age of 24. But what we found was really helpful was to kind of differentiate within working hours. Because there's no point in calling Lanark County Housing or Ontario Works after 4 o'clock or on the weekend. So that, right? And I think you find a lot of individuals get really frustrated when they're calling these services and they're closed for the next 3 days. Who do you call? So I think that's a really important thing to differentiate from.
Yes. Thank you. Jeff?
That gives me some good content.
I think sometimes they call a familiar face, someone that they know. And I don't mind putting CareBridge onto this list. We are a housing provider. depends on the issue, we're probably going to steer them to the county. And I think that's the beauty of working here in Lanark County is all the different agencies have an inherent kind of system navigation function that you can start with any of us, and we'll, depending on what the issue is, will help you get to where you need to go. People call here looking for housing, and we're part of the county system. So typically there's a long wait list, and we're going to suggest you get on the list. But it doesn't hurt to have agencies from across Lanark identified. If, as Carrie said, you go with a bigger brochure, certainly don't mind having Carebridge on that list, just because people in this, I'm in Almont, in this kind of neck of the woods, they often start with us, and then we'll steer them to, I had someone that I steered the family to Linda Trent or Vicky. It was an elderly gentleman that was struggling with his tenancy. Another one was a woman that I needed to connect with Lanark County Interval House. So they'll start wherever they are familiar locally, and then agencies can help them get placed or help them get the help they need by steering them in the right direction.
Thanks, Jeff. Any further additions here? And if not, if you think of something later, certainly reach out to Carrie and
let me know.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody.
Carl, you're back up with accessory units. Should be a standing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a bit of an update for the committee here. So we've discussed, and the committee's directed us to proceed with breaking out OP and zoning policy for additional residential units and run that in advance of the regular zoning review. So now that we've undertaken the first round of consultations with the public and agencies on the zoning project and presented that to council, we have set the stage with our consultants for that, and they are working on the draft official plan. And the OP policy will be very simple. We expect it would just essentially create that enabling policy, and the meat and potatoes would be in the zoning. So what we've advised our consultants is that we would like to take a draft OP official plan and zoning to this group in early October, and the Planning Advisory Committee for their regular October meeting, and then assuming we're all aligned, schedule the statutory public meeting in November. So then that would take us to late November for council approval, given respecting the statutory timelines that the Planning Act requires us to follow for new public meetings. So at this point, we're once we expect in the next week or so, or 2 weeks, to get the first round of first draft from our consultants, and then we hope to work with them on that, and take this to you in early October.
That's great news, Carl. Any questions or comments for Carl? Yes, Lindsay.
So I've missed 2 meetings, so I just want to make sure I'm caught up here. We're looking at amending the official plan as well as some of the zoning bylaws. Is that correct, Carl, with these consultants?
That's correct. And that's basically to align us with what the Planning Act requires for municipalities to allow additional residential, so accessory units both within and as detached units on a lot. Okay.
My only comment I'd love to just share would be, I find the more broad, especially for Lanark County, because there are all the different towns as well. So, there's Smiths Falls, there's Perth, everyone has their kind of own viewpoint. I've even run into complications in town where as soon as something's going to trigger an OP, I avoid pursuing that development, because amending the official plan versus amending a zoning bylaw It's just completely two different things. So the only thing I would love to just ask or maybe encourage is, I think we should make stuff in the OP a little bit more broader so that there can be more flexibility at the town level, so that you don't have applicants having to proceed with an official plan amendment that might scare them off. So that's just one comment I'd like to give is, make more of the nitty gritty, which I think you're going to do within the bylaws and the zoning within the town, but really reduce as much as we can on the official plan so that people don't have to go through OP amendments, because no one wants to go through them and it's a huge barrier.
Lindsay, Carl, I think you've got a response.
I agree with you 110%, Lindsay. And I think that's why, and ultimately what we're trying to do is create that enabling policy in the OP and keep it very simple, keep it very broad, what the Planning Act requires us to do, and hopefully create that enabling policy in the OP, carry that forward in the zoning bylaws so that additional residential units, where appropriate, can happen as of right, minimizing the requirement for additional planning applications.
Super. Thank you. Anything further here? No. So we look forward to, Ellie.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I'm pretty sure that just in regards to, secondary units and tiny homes, Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing is proposing changing the building codes to make inspections of tiny homes easier. And I believe they are looking at feedback or for feedback that might be more directed at Lindsay. But, so things are changing at the federal level as well as the municipal level. So that's always something to look at and kind of pay attention to as we go forward. I know Cornerstone, we have just submitted our 2 applications for permits for 2 secondary units, and one being attached and one being detached. Now this is in Perth because when we originally applied, Smith Falls didn't allow for the zoning. So, we can look at other townships and see what they're doing and how that is working out as well.
Thank you. Carl, do you have a comment there? Then Joanne?
Well, I think I'd be happy to provide that information to our zoning consultants and align that as best as possible with what they're looking to do too.
Is it that will be obviously a point of consideration in the changes. Joanne, you had your hand up.
Well, I was just listening to the zoning, and one of my good friends sold her house in Kempville and bought a modular home in a mobile park just outside of Greeley. And I know that in the zoning, there is no mobile park expansion or, but that could be a good way to also have affordable housing for some of our seniors that are looking to downsize and not ready to be in a nursing home, or not ready to be, like extended care. Is that something that the town would be interested in? Because where she is, most of the people that are there are people that are empty nesters, and they're all close to retiring. And that's basically who has, and they're all brand new. So, Ellie just brought up the tiny home in Perth, the initiative that was started a few years back that they were looking at implementing some units throughout Perth, but they weren't quite sure how that would work. But I'm just thinking that would be a very good option to look into.
Carl, can you comment on that, whether it be prefabricated modular homes, tiny homes on a lot? I guess, and the possibilities and what our OP says to that, and the zoning considerations.
Yeah, so our OP is pretty silent on that, and that's why. So it's not it, and the province has recently amended the Planning Act to require just a single additional residential unit, say in a backyard or something like that. So that's what we would be looking at through this process. But if we were looking for a sort of a broader community, then I think the question then becomes, and that's something for us to look at, is like I hesitate to use the term tiny home in say a zoning definition, because a tiny home means something to different people. We need to really drill down what does it mean from a legal perspective? Is it like a coach house? Is it on wheels? Those sorts of questions. I can't speak specifically to the example in Greeley, but I know in rural areas the challenges with mobile home parks, modular home parks comes into to servicing, and how is that if there's service privately and there's an issue with and there's an issue with the septic system or the communal septic system, then does the municipality then have that big obligation on their hands? So that's why a lot of rural municipalities are very hesitant to allow those sorts of communities. In the urban area where lands are already serviced or where servicing can be provided a little easier, then that's a different matter. And certainly if a proposal were to come down the pipeline in Smith Falls within our urban serviced area, then we can definitely we could look at that the same way we look at any other planning application, where we evaluate the impact on roads, confirm that it can be serviced, look at all of those normal questions we look at for any application. But I think broadly speaking, we'd be guided by official plan policies that encourage a variety of housing types, a variety of affordability thresholds, and really an inclusive residential community.
Thanks, Carl. I'm not sure who was first, Lindsay or Ellie. I'll go alphabetical and go with Ellie.
I was just going to say, I'm pretty sure the building code is proposing a tiny home to be anything under 400 square foot, following similar codes to that in Nova Scotia. I don't know if anybody saw that news article that came out, I think yesterday, about the not-for-profit pitching the tiny home neighborhood in Fredericton as a affordable housing game changer, and kind of what they're doing out there as a social enterprise to help people out of poverty. So, I mean, there's lots of work being done around the tiny homes. But yeah, I think it's 400 square foot is what's considered a tiny home.
Thank you. Lindsay?
I think the mobile kind of park idea, which, I mean, people can view a mobile park differently, but it's a really great thing if we can figure out how to provide it. My question is kind of, even though I guess from what I'm gathering from what you've said here, Carl, it's not really touched upon in our OP. If it's not touched upon in the OP, can it really come down to a town decision then if an application for it is submitted? Meaning the OP doesn't have any, requirements or hurdles that someone has to go over because they're maybe not in there. Would that then give the town authority to make a decision on an application if someone submitted one? Whether it's on service or private. Obviously the studies have to be done if it's on private, and probably on services too, just for the capacity. But I'm thinking in my head, if I were to go and buy a piece of property close to town right now and submit an application and there's not nothing about it in the OP, what stops me? Are there hurdles that would stop me in possibly setting up a place where people can park their mobile RVs and stuff for at least 6 months of the year versus trying to find housing and therefore creating that supply for those who need it more long term.
Back to you, Carl.
Thank you. So with respect to the OP, at this point, what we're looking at is implementing the Planning Act requirements, which are just for individual units on individual properties. With respect to a broader to a park or some sort of larger development, So that I'd have to take a closer look at our official plan just to see if it even speaks to that. In the event that we do need to amend our official plan, if we have a proposal that comes down the pipeline that's in the interest of the community and makes sense, the town actually is, as a single tier municipality, we don't have our council has the authority to approve amendments to the OP, just like with the zoning. So unlike elsewhere in the county, for instance, where a local OP has to go up to the county level and go through a much longer process, we have over the last few years approved a number of official plan amendments at the same time as we've approved zoning applications through a concurrent process as best as possible. So there is the possibility to do that, and I guess the question of whether we want to allow that sort of development as of right without a zoning or OP amendment, I guess the caution we would have there in terms of pre-zoning is we need to identify sort of where's a good location, what's an appropriate threshold, all of that, and build that into the policy. So whenever we do have a new type of development or something that we really haven't done before in the town, it's very normal to require a planning process to sort of identify the use and identify the policies and the conditions and sort of proceed on that level. And I think the questions we'd be looking at is, are we looking at sort of more of a campground? Or are we looking at more of a long-term accommodations where it's really fundamentally a residential use where we have to consider those services? And those are the conversations we would have if we have a proposal of this nature that's, I guess, unique to Smith Falls or new to Smith Falls, where we don't have the existing policy in place already.
Did we lose Mayor Panko? Oh, there he is.
Temporarily, yeah. So just switch over to a hotspot. My Wi-Fi went down, but so I missed Carl's response there. But is it fair to say, Carl, this is something you can bring back a little bit more information, understanding the changing trends in housing with small homes and modular builds, container builds, and to Lindsay's comment that if someone came forward with this today, how would we manage that? So, can we maybe have you do a little bit more work and bring this back for future discussion? Yes, certainly. So I guess looking either as, like right now, we're looking at, say, as in an individual unit in an individual backyard, but if we were looking at this as a standalone use or a community of smaller homes, then there's different planning, sort of a different planning context. And I'd be happy to take a look at what our OP has right now, what the provincial policy statement direction is, and we can have that discussion. Okay, thank you. Anything further on this subject before we move on? I see no hands. Okay, item E, draft resolution accessibility. Back to Carrie.
I think Jeff had a comment there, Mayor Panko.
All right, Jeff.
I just want to say that I love this group. That it's so creative, and to work with staff that are willing to invest time in these kinds of things, it's marvelous. I think that we're leaders here in the county, and if not in Eastern Ontario. And I've always thought that as much as people hate trailer parks, if we could build better trailer parks, it would be a marvelous thing. And I think that because they're on wheels and they look like trailers, imagine if a creative architect was to work on this kind of smaller home development. I know people, Sharon Musso, who sits on county council, she lives in a trailer park on the outskirts of Carlton Place, and there's a built-in community within that park where they look after each other. She's driving other seniors to medical appointments. You don't have to go out to an agency to arrange this. People, because they're in smaller homes, they tend to get out of those homes and connect on patios, on decks with other people within the community. It's a tailor-made way of building community where people are housed, but also support each other. I love this idea a lot. And I think we have to rename it, quit calling them trailer parks. And I know there's a term in the US called pocket neighborhoods where they often will build around a commons where people can come and have barbecues and play crokinole or play croquet or whatever. But people naturally get together with others and build community. I think it's really nice. Thanks, Carl, for working on this.
Thanks, Jeff. And I guess if you think of where many of our snowbirds would traditionally spend their winters would be in these mobile home parks in parts of Florida or Arizona. So it does happen elsewhere.
I think we need to give it a catchy name and quit calling them the names that have negative connotation. I know in a lot of those parks in the US, they're like gated communities. And I don't think that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about, and then they could be intergenerational. I think the idea of putting seniors together in a trailer park can work, but it's really nice if they're integrated across generations. So anyways, good work.
Thank you. Back to you, Carrie.
Well, we've kind of discussed this one. We've kind of deviated. So this was brought up at our last meeting. And we were going to pass a resolution to require builders to go above and beyond code. So now that we know that we technically can't do that, we've kind of come up with a different avenue where we're going to campaign municipalities to support a resolution that we're going to draft to amend or change the building code to allow for more barrier free. So this was, I think we've kind of already discussed this and we've given direction to me to draft that resolution. So we can probably skip that discussion. I think we had it earlier on.
I guess I would also suggest we take that to our Accessibility Advisory Committee for endorsement.
Oh, good idea.
Plus potentially a variety of charities and agencies that support people living with disabilities.
Great idea.
And Courtney.
So just to go back to kind of that like building code thing, can we kind of ask like why they say like there's no, I don't know how to word this. They make it barrier free, but like once it's barrier free, they literally don't really have to pay anything extra to make it fully accessible. Like it's just lowering counters and lowering things. Like why go as far as making it barrier free and accessible to the rooms, but then not making everything inside the rooms accessible? Like why do the job halfway and then just leave it at that?
Yeah. Great point.
That makes sense, but like
that could be in our resolution. Thank you. Okay. Tenant Workshop. So Courtney and Vicky have been working diligently at bringing this forward. There's been a couple of hurdles they've navigated their way around, I believe, and look to the two of you for bringing an update back to the group here.
So we have our date set. We worked with Linda. We finally got her on board for a date. The only detail we really have to iron out is the time that we're going to get it done. We've arranged for it to be kind of like a Zoom meeting like this, where Linda can present to everyone online, just trying to keep it as COVID safe and friendly as possible. So Linda will have a presentation to give over a Zoom meeting to everyone. We've organized for prizes in the form of gift cards for people who attend, and they can put their name in that. But Linda's on board for a set day, just waiting for time, and everything's good.
Awesome. And the date, Courtney?
We had it for October 1st. That was, we figured as soon as we get her, but still giving people a time. That's a Friday.
October 1st, you said?
1st?
Yeah, October 1st.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm also speaking with Kathy Botham from Your TV Smith Falls and trying to line up like a TV spot, I guess.
So your TV, good with Kathy?
Yeah, Your TV Smith Falls.
Okay. Yeah, probably not a bad idea to I can talk to Bob Perot at Lake 88. They do the In Focus, and that'd be another great way of promoting it. So he actually contacted me earlier today on something. So when I contact him back, I'll mention it. Perhaps he'd like to have the two of you on to talk about it. Okay, Joanne?
The tenant workshop, can you give me a little bit of details of what it is so that I could also maybe put the word out to some of the families that I'm working with? Like, what is it? Is it going to be something like what you did at Empress?
It's really as an information session, and this is arrived, I guess, through discussions we've had here. Recognizing that many tenants are not aware of their rights, and many are there are situations, especially now with houses being sold or homes being sold or renovated, and tenants being told they have to move out when they don't have to move out. So we want to make sure that people who are renting their home have the opportunity to stay there when it's at all possible, and recognizing that, I said before, that the most affordable home someone likely has is the one they're in now. And when they do have to move, they're facing a significant increase in the cost of housing. So the workshop will be to connect with people in their community to ensure that they have an opportunity to hear. Linda Tranter will be the presenter who can help people understand exactly what their rights are and what avenues they have to follow if they are facing a potential eviction. Lindsay?
Just wondering if during that presentation on Zoom, if even just the time period when she's on his website or something, so that they can still watch at least her presentation. So keep in mind like privacy and stuff, if there's many people on screen, and just record her section of, have it as a link that people can reference back to if they need to, or view if they weren't able to attend it.
Vicky or Courtney, do you want to respond?
We're hoping to air it on all platforms of social media that the town has. So YouTube, hopefully, it'll hopefully be on your TV, but I'm not too sure yet. If Sean, are you working out the details for that?
I'm not, but we can.
Okay, because I mean, the more the merrier, right? I don't know how much cable access people have though. And then I would have it. Yes, she's agreed that it can be recorded and uploaded for a future date to be looked at.
We planned on publishing it after for people to go back and watch if they missed it or they couldn't join live.
Yeah. And again, it's because people who maybe 6 months from now are facing a challenge and an issue, and a quick 1 hour watch of Linda's presentation will probably guide them to getting the right support that they need, the advice they need. Okay, so that's scheduled for, you mentioned October 1st. Now I know that will conflict with an event that Lorraine and I are potentially involved in, or will be involved in later that evening, an act of reconciliation that will be happening at twilight that day. So maybe if we're looking at from a timing standpoint, are we talking evening or late afternoon?
Linda's open availability.
Okay, so let's chat about, we can chat offline about the timing, just because this I'm sure many of you would like to attend this act of reconciliation in the community as well, which is scheduled now for October 1st. Okay, so we'll discuss it. Okay, anything further? We have inclusive housing as a standing item, but we've talked about that already. Anything further anyone wants to discuss before we wrap up? Lorraine?
I just have been doing some reading on, and some of you may already know of this corporation, Margarita Residence Corporation in Brockville. They have subsidized apartments. And I guess historically what happened is a number of people started buying homes in a large block on James Street, and I forget the name of the other street. But anyway, 2 buildings went up, 85 apartments in one and 45 in the other. And each building has 15 or above, 16 affordable apartments. And I just thought it would be interesting to get more information on how they went about that, because 15 apartments out of 85 is a lot, isn't it?
Well, that's more than, I guess, well, for us, there's no provincial standard. I guess it would be a provincial standard in Brockville, as they have public transit, limited public transit. So they may have inclusive housing bylaw. I'm not sure, but we can investigate that further. If you don't mind,
there's 2 senior buildings too, which I thought we have been talking about other ways seniors, and so they're smaller. There's 1 and 2 bedrooms, but I guess it's been really well rented and people are really happy there.
Can you forward that to Carrie, please, and she can circulate to the group.
Okay.
Thank you. Vicki, and then Joanne.
Yeah, so last meeting I had kind of asked about maybe applying to the province or etc. to for more funding for maybe rent arrears, etc. And it was kind of shuffled over to Cornerstone Landing, but I was thinking a little more on it, and maybe we could apply for funding for rent abatements, give it to OW to funnel out, because at the current time I think HOP is only $500, and I know that's not covering enough. And if people are using it to catch up on rent, like the main thing is to keep them housed, right? So the more options, the better. And I think that would be a quick action item we could possibly take on it.
So, Joanne, I'm going to go to Ellie before I go to yourself. I think Ellie has a response to this, I'm guessing.
I was just going to say I would love to see more funding go to the HOPS program, because it is a year-long program and it does vary. Sometimes it's 500 and sometimes it's 1,000. And it actually has changed like 3 times, I think, this year. I've got different answers depending on when I've called. But I mean, you have to also think the big issue is if somebody uses the HOPS, the Housing Options Program funds, in January to help with first and last month's rent, now they're out of options. Now they're not allowed to do anything. And now they've got rent arrears, which just seems silly, right? Because then we're going to put them up in a hotel if they're homeless, or come January, they would have access to that 1,500, whichever it may be. So, and it also depends on who you speak to. I found as well, when it comes to the HOPS program, what is available and what is not available. So anything that we can help support that and contribute to that, I think would be really great.
So what I will do, I will see if either Emily Hollington or Shauna Stone from the county, Lanark County Housing, who manage that program, and all of the provincial funding programs come through Lanark County Housing, and they'll come to a future meeting to go over those programs, where we can express our thoughts on the limitations and suggestions for enhancements. That sound reasonable?
Yeah, I think we understand the programs. I really want funding, like, available, because I know people need it immediately. And wait, how do you tell your landlord, oh, sorry, dude, I kind of used it on my first month's rent. Can you wait till January until it comes back in? It's just precarious. And I think housing people in hotels costing way more than it would just to give them the money to pay the rent. There's just too many technicalities on this, and I think we can skirt a few.
So yes, I think Emily and Sean are the two that say that ultimately it's county council's decision on how that money gets used. It does come to county. It comes to community services, which Councillor McKenna and I sit on. But of course, we have limited say. We don't have a full vote at the county level. However, I can tell from previous experience that generally what's been recommended by Emily Hollington, who's a director, is what county council does. So by advising her how we think that money could be better utilized, she's an opportunity to, one, I guess, create that in policy when it comes to that to county council and how they would utilize that money for 2022. And secondly, then I think the other avenue we could go is we can push the province for additional support there. And it's social service relief funding from COVID has been there to help provide additional funding over the last year and a half, which is more than had been available before. But of course, the other issue is with the end of social service relief funding going into 2022, there is going to be a smaller pot of money for them to draw from probably than what they've had in the past. So to your point, Vicky, what's the most recent past is probably better than the coming future.
Thank you. I really do appreciate it.
So Carrie's still listening, or we will invite Emily or Shauna to an upcoming meeting. Okay, she's got it yet. Okay. Joanne, you had your hand up as well.
I was just wondering for funding for subsidize, like how the county just has so many units that are subsidized to a private landlord. Is there a way that through this group that we could address that and increase funding for that subsidy so that, there are better opportunities? Like they were saying, like with HOP, once you use it, you're stuck for a whole year. But what if instead of using HOP, if we could try and find some ways to subsidize so that they pay like $250 and, like we pay, a group would pay another $250. So it actually helps them so they're not getting behind on their hydro or like looking at subsidies. But
I think your point is very valid as well. And the same as Vicky's, I think so we should express that to Emily. And I guess, so one, the funding they use comes from the province. So it would be a matter of trying to, one, convince the province that more is needed, or there's also no reason why the county can't add further funds to these programs, I believe. So to ensure that, and which also mean the town as contributor, we contribute to this as well. So I think these are the messages we need to share with Emily or Shauna to try and help them, I guess, see from those of you who are experiencing getting feedback from the front lines and know what it's like on the ground with people. I think it's very important we share those experiences. So we'll work with that. Lindsay?
Just on to Courtney's points, I think everyone's point, which is like money's needed today, yesterday, last week. And it seems like some of the avenues we can explore right now, there's a few bodies that have to approve it all. And I don't know if we've discussed this before, and this might just be a council decision, but it's a body that I think is easier to approach. Can the council pass something where any homeowner in the area, if they were to give like $250 towards a fund to help subsidize rent within the town, that they get $250 off their tax bill, the property tax bill? Like, are we able to create something like that so that people can actually donate something into a fund up to a certain amount? Because obviously the town has to operate on those monies. But is there a dollar to give it in advance, or as the fiscal year or calendar year when that tax bill is due, they can get a credit for that amount?
I don't know. Carrie, you want to comment? My first reaction would be that the county has the process in place today to manage these programs, and they have the wait lists, and they do this. For us to do it would create another layer of, I guess, complexity when it comes to how do you determine how to, be a lot of factors to consider. That said, I don't know if it would make sense that the town consider creating a rent bank, for lack of a better expression, and how we would dole that out and how we would collect money for that. And whether that be voluntary and seek the support of people in the community who'd be willing to help with that, or we add it as a budget item, which would then provide everybody in town who owns a property would contribute something towards that. So I don't know. It's I'm not sure what the best solution is here. And then say, ideally, this is something the county would say, we recognize the province isn't doing enough and we want to do more. And it could be done through Lanark County Housing as it is now, but it would be supported by all the municipalities in Lanark County, including us. And Carrie?
Just to
I'm thinking too, though, right?
Sorry, go ahead, Lindsay.
Sorry, Carrie.
No, that's okay. Go
just
ahead.
one other point was that we charge like a school board percentage as part of your tax bill, right? All the things that make up your tax bill. There's an item for the services that you use and things like that. Like, even if we were to add, and maybe a lot of residents may not like this, but it's part of protecting the community. What if you added 0.001 on everyone's tax bill, and everyone's taxes did raise a bit, but it really went towards a lot of good, like that money that's necessary each year. I don't know. I feel like there's some way that we can look at these property taxes that people have to pay every year and do something there. Because it really is the community helping the community, like the direct community. I don't know, but Carrie, I'm curious as to what you pulled that book out.
It's my municipal act. It's my Bible. So there is a provision, and it pertains only to manufacturing, industrial, and commercial enterprises, and it's a bonusing provision where municipalities can't offer or grant assistance to these three different groups, and that constitutes lending money, guaranteed borrowing, leasing or selling property at below fair market value, or giving a total or partial exemption from any levy, charge, or fee. So there is that provision in the Act that does restrict the municipality, but like I said, that is with commercial, industrial, and manufacturing. Those three different, not residential, but just, I'd have to do a little more digging, but that bonusing provision just pops up in my head whenever there's a discussion like this. So that is one restriction I know of just off the top of my head.
Well, the one mechanism we use now to provide any form of funding to a individual property owner is through our community improvement plan, which is designed primarily today to help stimulate the redevelopment and improvement of buildings within our downtown core. And so of course, we're working on the development of affordable housing CIP to try and help provide an avenue to encourage more affordable housing in the community. So I wonder if having a rent bank is potentially an option that the affordable housing CIP could fund. And again, and maybe it's a matter of we would not dole the money out directly, but we would provide funds to Lanark County, who would then dole it out through their existing programs. Just a thought. Vicki?
I believe a rent assistance program through the CIP funding would be essential, at least that way if we can't do anything through the HOP fund, or if HOP funds dry out, we have an alternative program to go to instead of just relying solely on the county, which traditionally has not always worked.
Joanne?
Not to be not looking at other areas in the county that are having difficulty, but by making an initiative for Smith Falls community to do a rent bank, as you say, but then download it to the county, then it's not just for Smith Falls residents, it's for PERT. So it would be something maybe that the county and the mayors from Carlton Place and maybe address it more as, like all our towns are struggling right now. All our towns have shortage of homes, shortage of affordable housing. We also have transportation issue. So how about if we help each other by supplying our money to the county that will be our distributors, so that, so it's not just like Smith Falls that's doing the initiative and putting money forward. If it was addressed to all mayors, in Lanark County, then it takes away, it could be like a bigger buck, or it could be, like, it could be a bigger endeavor than just taxing, like having a portion of the taxes.
Yeah, your point's very relevant, Joanne. And I mean, for us to do it ourselves, the overhead cost of us doing that probably doesn't justify the amount of money we be able to put out. We do have to have a staff member who's involved in doing that and build the programs. And so the county already has this all in place. But you're right. If we sent the money to the county, would it be coming back directly to Smith Falls? The problem is countywide. And part of the challenge, I would say, at the county level is it's largely an urban problem. So I think we need a strong evidence that the current programs are not meeting the needs, and we need to be able to quantify how much additional funding would be needed to meet the needs in order to convince county council that it makes sense to ultimately raise taxes in order to get enough money to create an additional rent bank. So the point in time count for homelessness will probably provide me some important data, but I think it's also a matter of trying to understand how many people in our communities are having significant difficulties paying rent. And the one measure, obviously, is how soon in the year the HOP funding dries up and how limited that program may be. Of course, and the province dictates how that program monies are to be used too. There's some parameters, but ultimately, there's discretion, but ultimately there's also parameters the province establishes. Vicki?
I think it's pretty apparent how much that local programs are struggling or maxed out or completely, some are inefficient altogether because of limitations. I really encourage anybody who is not in the same viewpoint to join any local rent groups on Facebook and see all the dire messages of people begging for anywhere to stay for the temporary time being. And I think in the long run that we don't need evidence. It's shown people are living in hotels. It's going to cost more to house them in hotels than it is going to keep them in houses. That's our whole mandate.
So Vicki, if you don't mind sharing some of those as an example.
Absolutely, I can do that. Absolutely, for next meeting.
And I also think understanding the dynamics at county council. I think we'd probably have to be able to quantify the numbers of people and the depth of the issue. And so when Emily's here, hopefully next meeting or the meeting after, she can tell us how the HOP funds and the other programs are being used, the COB, and to ensure that and help us understand from her perspective how much greater the demand is than the supply of money that's currently available. So that's a good starting point. And you're having the insights you're able to provide will help her understand maybe what's happening on the ground here as well. Okay. Anything further on this? Okay, so I think we're starting to populate our next agenda from discussion today. And I'll ask for a motion for adjournment. Moved by Vicki, seconded by Courtney. All in favor? Thanks everyone so much for your outstanding participation and passion today. And to Jeff's point, I think we're delving in areas that have not previously been dealt with. And I think we've got a great group here committed to try and make a difference and trying to help the people of our town. So we'll look forward to connecting with you again soon. Take care.
Thank you.